At exactly 8:01 in the morning, 4 people in neon safety vests marched up my driveway like some kind of budget SWAT team and taped a bright red seizure notice right onto my garage door. Their leader, Pamela Sutter, shouted for the entire neighborhood to hear. By the authority of the Fox Glen Meadows HOA, we claim this property. The thing is, I didn't even live in Fox Glen Meadows. My name's Pwash Nolan Price. 34 software engineer, quiet guy by nature, peace and silence enthusiast by choice. I bought my house on Juniper Hollow Lane, specifically because it was outside the HOA boundary, 2 streets and a drainage ditch away from their jurisdiction. I did my homework. I wanted birds in the morning, a hammock under the trees, and a simple rectangular mailbox. No fines, no rules, no nonsense. But peace apparently is a luxury that certain types of people can't stand watching others enjoy. On my closing day, Pamela showed up with a wicker basket full of cookies and unsolicited regulations. She handed me a packet of HOA bylaws like it was a gift. No flags, no overnight work trucks, and absolutely no visible hobbies, she said with the tone of someone who'd never been contradicted in her life. I pointed to the plat map I'd printed, the one that clearly showed I wasn't part of her little kingdom. "I'm not in your HOA, Pamela," I said. She frowned like I'd just told her Santa wasn't real and muttered, "Details are a state of mind." That was the beginning of what I can only describe as a suburban fever dream. Within a week, I started finding what she called courtesy citations under my windshield wiper. One said, "Mailbox color non-compliant." Another said, "Unauthorized metallic wind decorations." She'd even printed violation codes that didn't exist in her own bylaws. Code 37A apparently covered rogue wind chimes. At first I laughed it off, but then she took it online. The Fox Glen Meadows HOA Facebook page started posting aerial drone shots of my yard, complete with red circles and captions like, "Visual contamination detected." Someone, obviously Pamela, had zoomed in on my recycling bins and labeled them chaos. They were the same blue county bins everyone else had. Then she started hosting what she called visual compliance reviews. Every Thursday night, she'd project drone footage onto a screen in the clubhouse and narrate her findings, complete with suspenseful background music. My yard became her weekly horror story. Still, I told myself it would blow over. Some people just need an audience, right? But then one morning, a bright orange flyer appeared on my mailbox. Official vote annexation of Juniper Hollow Lane. They were literally voting to absorb my street into their HOA, something they had zero legal authority to do. I watched from a distance as 40-something residents gathered in a gazebo, eating finger sandwiches and raising their hands like they were founding a new nation. Pamela stood at the front declaring the vote. Unanimous. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so insane. Her community standards patrol started knocking on my door at dawn. 3 retirees in matching windbreakers embroidered with community standards enforcement. They said my garden hose projected disorderly energy. I didn't even know what that meant. One of them took pictures of it. At this point, I mailed Pamela a certified letter, county maps, HOA charter, the works highlighting the actual boundary lines. Her reply came on lavender stationery, handwritten, "Sovereignty is flexible." Next to her signature was a doodled smiley face. A week later, I opened my mailbox and found a certified envelope stamped, "Emergency Lien." Inside was a fake legal document demanding HOA dues and threatening civil seizure if I didn't pay in 10 business days. It even had an eagle seal that looked government-issued. That night, I sat in my kitchen staring at that envelope, wondering if I'd missed something. Maybe some obscure zoning thing. Maybe she was right somehow. My mind went in circles. I'd done everything right, yet here I was being hunted by a woman with a clipboard and a god complex. I barely slept. For the first time, I thought about selling the house, just walking away. But then Pamela crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I was grabbing my mail when she appeared out of nowhere, standing so close I could smell her perfume. Her eyes were sharp and cold. "We'll seize you by force if we have to," she hissed. That was it. Something inside me snapped into focus. I wasn't going to be bullied by a woman who thought bylaws were divine scripture. I called Deputy Maris Ocampo from the county sheriff's office and explained everything. She listened carefully, then asked me to forward the documents. I also sent copies to the HOA State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division that fake lien was likely mail fraud. And since it came through USPS, I looped in a postal inspector too. After that, I set all my doorbell cameras to record always mode. I logged every knock, every flyer, every insult. I turned my quiet house into a fortress of documentation. When Pamela scheduled her next annexation rally, I decided to attend not as a victim this time, but as a witness ready to end this circus. The gazebo was packed. Pamela stood at the front with her clipboard talking about community expansion and maintaining aesthetic sovereignty. Deputy Ocampo rolled up mid-speech, stepping out of her cruiser with calm, deliberate movements. She walked straight up to Pamela and asked in that steady law enforcement tone, "Did you threaten to seize Mr. Price's property by force?" Pamela didn't flinch. She looked straight at the deputy and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "We're enforcing community order beyond traditional borders." The silence that followed was electric. Ocampo blinked slowly, then spoke into her radio, requesting backup. The crowd started murmuring. And then my phone rang. It was Assistant Attorney General Lia Chan. I put her on speaker for everyone to hear. "Fox Glen Meadows, HOA," she said, "has no jurisdiction over Juniper Hollow Lane. Your charter ends where your map ends. Any further attempts to claim otherwise constitute deceptive practice under state law." You could hear a pin drop. Then the postal inspector's sturdy guy, Quiet Shoes, stepped forward and asked, "Who mailed the fraudulent lien notice?" Pamela opened her mouth, then closed it. The two board members standing beside her slowly backed away like Roombas encountering stairs. A week later, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. The room was packed, residents, county reps, even a local reporter or two. I came prepared, a binder full of proof. County plat maps with highlighted borders, property records, 37 minutes of doorbell footage showing Pamela stapling flyers to my fence, instructing her patrol to trespass, and live streaming her jurisdiction by adjacency speech. When I finished, the room buzzed with whispers. Then on the projector, Assistant Attorney General Chan appeared again, this time via live video. Her voice was firm, lawyer smooth. "The Fox Glen Meadows HOA is under investigation for unauthorized legal actions, deceptive trade practices, and harassment," she said. "We are referring evidence to both the county sheriff and the Postal Inspection Service." Deputy Ocampo stood up and approached Pamela. "Pamela Sutter," she said clearly, "you're being served with a temporary restraining order for harassment and false reporting." Pamela's face went pale. The room erupted. Some residents clapped. Others just stared, mouths open. One man whispered, "Is this what democracy looks like?" By the end of that meeting, the HOA board had voted unanimously to remove Pamela from her position as president. The fallout was swift. The Attorney General's office fined Fox Glen Meadows $25,000 for issuing deceptive notices to non-members. They were required to complete mandatory compliance training. Yes, an HOA had to take compliance training. The Postal Service handed out a fine for the forged lien letter. As for Pamela, she took a plea deal. 1 year of probation, 100 hours of community service, and a no-contact order, so specific it included drones, social media posts, and communal vibes. When the judge read that last part, Pamela's face went from red to white to a color I can only describe as ultraviolet rage. She opened her mouth to argue, but her lawyer gently grabbed her arm. The gavel came down. Crack. And it was over. Walking out of that courtroom, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt steady, calm, like the air had finally stopped vibrating around me. I went home, sat in my hammock, and listened to the wind move through the trees. For the first time in months, no one was pointing a drone at me. No one was telling me what color my mailbox should be. All of this because one woman couldn't stand the idea that someone might live peacefully beyond her control. "You know, I bought this house to own a little patch of quiet. I never expected I'd have to fight this hard just to keep it. But I did, and I learned something in the process. Sometimes standing your ground isn't about pride. It's about protecting your right to peace.